Hi, everybody. So it's always great to be here because first of all, I'm amazed. Lots of old faces. Well, you're not old. Well, all of us are kind of getting a little old, right? I mean, you know, I kept hearing, Pastor Roger says, we've known each other for decades, and I'm thinking, has it been decades? It has been. Wait, I first met, actually, John Klein is here. Where'd you go, John? Over there. John came to Israel representing fellowship in 1992. And that's when I first met this church. That was a long time ago. Anyway, it's fun. Special. But what's amazing is to see how many new faces, and especially young families. Every time I come back here, there's more new faces and more young families, and to have this huge circle of kids. No, you're not kids, you're kids, okay? You know, dancing and singing, it's just amazing. So, good for you. Or as what we say in Hebrew, kol hakavod. Really, you're doing a great job here. So you figured something else. Right, and you know what? I think it probably is Israel. You know, when you're selling a good product, and there's no better product than Israel, you're going to have buyers. All right, so first of all, I brought a little material with me, and it's out on the table. I figured you've seen the material, but again, new faces. So for those of you who haven't gotten the material, I put it there. But I would like to get everybody on our sign-up sheet. If you're already on the list and you want to just write down your name so I'll remember you were here, that would be great. But certainly anyone who's not getting our stuff, please sign up. So I'll pass this around. Here you go. We'll start with you guys. Okay, how many people are going to Israel? Good. So I would love to see you when you're in Israel, but I just spoke to Pastor Roger, and this schedule is extremely tight. But if, you know, you want to see me, just call me. I could come, I could say hello to you in Kedumim, or, you know, you can play hooky from working for a few hours and come visit me. But whatever, we'll figure something out. But it is really a pleasure for me to be here when you're not so scheduled and you have time. All right, anyway, what can I tell you? It's a really hard time in Israel. It really is. And I was here last year, and it was really the beginning of the war and a very difficult time. And I think I came here just after my nephew had been killed in battle. That was last year, January 1st. So you can imagine how for our family, this has been a particularly difficult time. And I know some of you have participated in the memorial project that we are doing. They're building a new park in Karnei Shomron. So that's going to start working. So hopefully that'll be done soon. But, you know, for our family, and for my brother and sister-in-law in particular and their kids, this has been a very hard time. How do you get used to living with a hole in your heart, right? And there's people, you know, a lot of people talk about how do you bring comfort to a family that has lost a child? Yeah, we have there's jokes, you know, amongst these families, what not to say, you know, like, and I didn't know this myself. Of course, none of us do until you're in that situation, but my brother and sister-in-law said, the worst thing anybody can say is, don't worry, it'll all be fine. You know, sometimes they want to, like, punch you in the nose, you know, when you say that. And you mean well, right? You mean well, and everything is said, you mean well, but, and I think that if I'm taking that idea and I zoom out a little bit, and I'm saying, what is Israel going through today? And here I'm talking as someone who's really in it, right? And it is very, very important to us to keep hope. We dare not give up hope, and for me, it's actually not that difficult, because I truly believe that God is with us. I truly believe, not just that he's with us, as individuals, every one of you, I'm sure, has gone through a hard spot in life, right? And some people more than others. And so as individuals, you can say, I believe in God, number one. Number two, I believe God is watching over me, right? And number three, you will probably also say, or many will actually feel his presence. And so as you're going through that hot spot, you might say, I know God is going to see me through this. Whatever he has in mind, however this is going to play out, I know God is going to see me through this. And you're saying that based on this, I don't know, faith, okay? God never told you as an individual, right, everything's going to be rosy. God doesn't promise that to any individual, right? And yet, and look, bad things happen to people all the time. People die. Things happen. So it's not like you're walking around with this insurance policy that God has promised you no matter what happens, you're going to end up smiling and you're going to have a great life and you're going to be healthy we're not stupid. We know that. And yet, people of faith have a certain level of confidence that however it turns out, it is where God wants me to be, okay? So that if God is giving us trials and tribulations or whatever, it's what I need to be going through, right? But when it comes to the nation of Israel, it's a whole different ballgame. First of all, a large group of people, you can't say everybody feels the same way, And I would say the vast majority of people in Israel, unlike what is usually said, very often people say, oh, there's about 25% religious and everybody else is secular. Wrong. There are about 25% of people in Israel who are Orthodox Jews, which means they're very strict about all the commandments and they look like me, more or less. But I can't tell you how almost every single person, including some of the people who would call themselves rabid, secular, whatever, even those people are saying, thank God, all the time. And I don't think they're just saying it as a matter of, everybody says it, so they're saying too. You saw, I don't know how much of this you see, but when some of the hostages were coming back, and you saw snippets of them meeting up with their families. Just one of the people that came out just yesterday, this family is embracing him, hugging him, and the father, he doesn't have a kippah on his head, and he didn't put a kippah on his head. He burst out just with the blessing, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higienu lezman hazeh. Blessed art thou, O Lord, King of the universe, that you have brought us to life and enabled us to come to this amazing moment. Okay, and it's a blessing that you say anytime a miracle has happened, anytime you're celebrating a holiday, which usually celebrates a miracle, that kind of thing. So there's so much expression of faith going on in Israel as a matter of course. It's on the radio, it's on TV, it's in the streets, it's in the grocery store, it's just there. But beyond all that, Israel is something. Israel is a concept. Israel is a reality that is not like any other nation. Because it is only to the nation of Israel that God promised a destiny and that God promised an everlasting future. I mean, think about that for a moment. If we go all the way back to, I have all these bookmarks all over the Bible, and then I forget why I bookmarked them. I don't know why. This was for today. Whatever. Do you do that in your Bibles? I have a whole bunch of these. And then I bookmark. Okay, anyway, it doesn't matter. So when God first speaks to Abraham, which of course who is the first person that gets this promise, God says to him, I will give this land to your children. And he says that in Genesis 12. And then later on, he says to him, and I don't know if I have it written down where, but later on he says to him, that I will give you this land as an everlasting possession. Well, there you have it. That's permanent, right? That's forever. But the best one is, and I think this is what has defined the Jewish people since the beginning, and that is in Deuteronomy 11, where the nation of Israel is standing in the desert. They're about to go into the land of Israel. And this text is actually repeated as a covenant when the nation of Israel enters into the land of Israel and stands on Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal and enters into that first covenant with God in the land of Israel. And the message there is, and that covenant itself is known as the blessings and the curses, and you are blessed. If you do what God wants, you will have blessing, and if you don't do what God wants, you'll have curses. But then Deuteronomy 11, coming on the heels of that, says, and when all these things will have come upon you, the blessing and the curse, in other words, after we've played out the whole picture, okay, which I've given before you, and you will be restored to your heart from all the nations to which the Lord your God has dispersed you. Because the ultimate curse is exile, right? And then God promises, and you will be restored to the Lord your God. You will listen to his voice in all that I command you today, you and your children with all your heart and all your soul. And the Lord your God will restore you. He will have mercy on you. He will return and gather you from all the nations to which the Lord your God has spread you. Even if you will be dispersed to the ends of the earth, from there the Lord your God will gather you, from there he will take you, and the Lord your God will bring you to the land that your fathers inherited, and you will inherit it and prosper and multiply more than your fathers. And you know these verses, and I think I've even discussed them here. But to me, it's not just about restoring the land and restoring the people to the land, but inherent in this is a promise that the nation of Israel will be around forever. And that even if we go through hard times, and particularly we know that we were exiled from our land for close to 2,000 years, no nation survives that. And yet we did. And the only reason we did is because we believed in this scripture and similar scriptures that are repeated later on. And what that means is that no matter what is happening to us, we know, we don't just think, we don't just assume, we don't just believe, we know that this is not the end of the story. That the end of the story is restoration. Okay, and if you need to understand how Israel is handling all of this today, this is the bottom line. Because we have witnessed and experienced terrible, terrible things, and yet we have demonstrated a level of resilience that I think people around the world look at us as a nation and say, how do they do that? So let's first talk a little bit about what we've gone through this year. I think to appreciate what our resilience is, you need to understand what we have gone through. And I know you read the news and you follow that, but I want to try to bring a little bit of a personal perspective and give you a sense of what people are thinking and feeling. If I had to categorize, if I put the nation of Israel on the psychoanalyst's couch now, I would say the entire nation has PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, 100%. And yet, and this is what's insane, and just like a few days ago on TV, there was a psychiatrist, and, on Israeli TV, an Israeli psychiatrist that was discussing this. And he said, after what we've gone through, and this is where we're at, he says, yet we still feature high, like the highest in all of the Western cultures in what's known as the happiness index. They created this happiness index some years ago. They're actually professors of psychology who have studied this idea of happiness. What makes individuals happy and what makes societies happy. And in general, it's not, you could assume, well, if you have an easy life, you're going to be happy, and if you have a hard life, you're going to be sad. But no, that's not the case. And so they've studied what actually creates, happiness. How come someone, no matter what they've gone through, is happy? So they've studied societies as well. And Israel comes out on top. Now, here we are. We're a country that just almost a year and a half ago, October 7, 2023, we were attacked viciously. And I want to, I'm not going to get graphic. I mean, we're not going to talk about, you all know what happened, but I want to point out a few issues. So first of all, wars are as old as humanity, okay? But what is a war usually about? Now, I don't mean what starts the war, but how does the war play out? Usually there's an army on one side and an army on the other side, and one of those armies tend to start the war, but maybe it's because something the other side did, whatever the reason is. And armies go at it, right? And they fight each other, and sometimes they're pretty even, and sometimes there's a disparity between them. And they're trying to accomplish something. It could be land. It could be that one side decides they want to, the other side has taken some of their land and they want to get it back. It could be over some kind of natural resource. One wants the oil, they want the coal, they want the diamonds, they want whatever, whatever. There's so many different reasons. But it's usually a nation against a nation at the level of an army. What does that mean? It means that it's not personal. Okay? You are in the army of the country of whatever, and so you're loyal to your country, and you're defending your country's honor, but you don't necessarily have a personal hatred for the soldier opposite you. You want to defeat that army, and as part of defeating that army, you may end up killing a soldier, okay? Now, one of the things about modern warfare, unlike ancient warfare, is that it's even less personal today. Because picture big tanks, going in and shooting. You don't even see who you're fighting against because you're in the tanks, or airplanes, right? The days of one side against the other with the sabers rattling are gone. But even then, like you see the old movies, it would be hundreds of soldiers on each side going at each other with horses or without horses, with the sabers. Whoever you happen to stab was just one in a whole line. Now let's think about what happened on October 7th. This was not an army. It was terrorists. Terrorists who were trained, well-trained. Terrorists who have a personal hatred for every Jew because they're Jewish. And it's personal. Okay? And how do I know it's personal? Because when they came out to kill us, first of all, how did they figure this out? How did they plan it? Part of the planning was, and we learned this afterwards, some of the terrorists came in and they had maps in their pockets that had a particular community or a particular neighborhood sketched out in the map with the names of the families on each house. And the name of the family would also say how many adults, how many children, did they have dogs. Now you could say, yeah, whether or not they had dogs, that could be like that's related to how successful you're going to be, right? If you want to do this quietly, you don't want the dog to discover you and start barking. Okay. But why would you need to know the names of these families? Well, it seems that the people who drew those maps were people who had either worked in those communities. They were Arabs from Gaza who had come into the communities and worked. Some of them were Arabs that had been helped by the people in the communities. One of the bodies that was released a couple days ago was a man named Oded Lifshitz. He was 83 years old on October 7th when he was captured. It seems he was murdered within a day or two, and his body was just now returned. This man, Oded Lifshitz, was politically on the far left. But he got to the far left from a very, what I call naive place. But he was pure, okay? This was a man who really and truly believed that if we just shower our Arab neighbors with love, if we help them, and this is what he did. He would arrange for them to have jobs. They had a whole initiative going that if there were Arabs from Gaza who needed medical treatment beyond the ordinary, and therefore the hospitals in Gaza maybe couldn't provide them with the best care, they would arrange to have these Arabs come over into Israel, and they would drive them, not just arrange for them to have the treatments, or they would drive them to the doctors, they would help them buy medicine, they would make all these arrangements. The very same people that they had helped were the people who came now in and targeted this Oded Lipschitz, captured him and took him back to Gaza, an 83-year-old man. On October 7th, there's the division of Hamas that was responsible for the attacks were a unit, or I don't know what you'd call them, the Nukhba. That's what they call themselves, Nukhba. And we all know that. We never knew this name before, but of course, since October 7th, to us, the Nukhba is like a name you want to spit at, okay? What's the Nukhba? The Nukhba were those terrorists who planned and executed the attack on October 7th. But what not everybody realizes is that in addition to the Nukhba was the ones that were trained, and they had the weapons, okay? And they were the ones who, it was all planned, which one is flying the gliders and which one is cutting the fence, and everybody had their job, real strategy, and they go in and they're trained and they know where they're going. But once they broke down the fence, and once they were succeeding in doing their terrible things, thousands of ordinary Gazans poured across the fence. Now, typically, when you have this kind of situation, and you have ordinary people coming behind an army, what are the ordinary people going for? Looting, right? And there was plenty of that too. They went in, they killed the people, so you expect these people to come in afterwards and they're going to steal the TVs and the videos and the jewelry, right? Well, they did that too. But not only, they also murdered people. In a frenzy, this is evil. This is personal evil. These are people that you and I don't know. You can get angry at somebody. You can even want to punch somebody in the face. Now, I hope nobody does that. But you know, you can get angry with somebody, and you say, even really nasty people. You might see somebody, I'm assuming none of you really know nasty people. But you could see someone on television who's getting up there saying things, and you're so angry, you want to throw your shoe at the TV. Right? But truth of the matter is, you don't really want to hurt anybody. You just want to, like, throw a few dishes at the wall or something. Here, you have a situation. They're not angry at us. We don't know these people. They hate us. They hate us in a very personal way. This forced Israel to confront the depths of evil that are living right next door to us. Now, on one hand, you could say we weren't that surprised. We have seen terrorists, we have seen horrible things, you know, it's true. But there is something about the intensity of what we saw on October 23rd, the level of evil, the intensity of it, the numbers, the sheer numbers, that I think took our breath away. And that has continued because we then have a war and we have our soldiers going in. And I have two sons who were combat soldiers, one in Gaza, one in Lebanon, and in a few other places. But particularly, let's focus on Gaza now. And also my nephews who were in Gaza. Every person who was in Gaza came back with the exact same story. There wasn't a house that they went into, and that's what they did. They went house by house, clearing out weapons, houses that were booby-trapped, looking for tunnels, looking for hostages, looking for whatever. There wasn't a house that they went into that was not affiliated with Hamas. Not one. There wasn't a house that didn't have weapons under a child's bed, an entrance to a tunnel in a playroom. Okay? And some of these houses, by the way, my kids said were just gorgeous. They couldn't get over some, not just modern appliances and all that kind of stuff, but beautiful homes that, of course, they didn't leave them in a very nice state. But that's okay. So on the one hand, and we're dealing with a situation that it doesn't end. This is the longest war Israel has ever fought, and we haven't finished it yet. Now, it's on a different level right now, but it's the longest war we ever fought, and we have had unbelievable successes. I'm sure, for example, everybody remembers the pagers, right? That was amazing, and that just brought such a smile to our faces when we saw that. But meanwhile, Hamas is still in Gaza. The place is full of rubble. The place is a mess, and they're coming back to the north. And Israel, unfortunately, has had to make enormous, painful, terrible concessions to the Palestinians, to Hamas, in order to get the hostages back. And there are still 70-some hostages in Gaza that were not part of the first stage of this deal, of which they estimate about 26 are alive. And of those 26 that are alive, quite a number of them we know for a fact are alive and were actually seen very recently by the hostages that were recently returned. And we also have information that they are being treated terribly. Okay, and we've seen these stories. I'm sure you saw how these people look when they came back, and you've heard their stories, and it's terrible. So you sit there in Israel. At the same time, terrorism is rising in Judea and Samaria. Now, Hamas is not only in Gaza. Hamas is in Judea and Samaria. So some of you are going to Gedumim. I don't want to frighten you, but I'm sure you know that just a few weeks ago, there was a terrorist attack on the main road that connects Kedumim to my own community of Karnei Shomron. 2 women from Kedumim were murdered as they were driving in the car, one of whom was a very dear friend of my sister, and a young man was murdered in front of his 10-year-old son. That 10-year-old son is one of my grandson's best friends, and he grew up the father, one who was killed, grew up in my community. He's a good friend of my nephew. So this is in Judea and Samaria. This is not in Gaza. And this kind of thing, the vast majority of the terrorist attacks that are planned and are tried to be executed are stopped because we have a fabulous army, we have a fabulous intelligence service, and we have an amazing God who enables these things to get found out before they become a terrible attack. But every so often, something slips through. And that reminds us that we have to constantly be vigilant. Now, right after October 7th, one of the things that was so shocking was the number of terrorists that attacked. In Judea and Samaria, we have been on the alert for decades already against this idea of a terrorist attacking. And in my own community, over 20 years ago, a suicide bomber came into our community and blew himself up in the local shopping center, and 3 teenagers were killed. One terrorist, who was actually a teenager. You probably all remember the Fogel family from Itamar, who was murdered in their beds. 2 teenagers. This has always been what we're expecting, and therefore the goal was get cameras, get a good security team, catch that one terrorist as or before he enters the community so you can prevent the attack from happening, and that usually succeeds. But suddenly, on October 7th, we were faced with this reality of not one or two terrorists, but hundreds entering a community. So that, of course, put us all into huge panic, and we at CFOIC, one of the things we did immediately was to raise funds, which we did, thank God, and thanks to you, because you were part of that, to purchase the extra security equipment that we needed, more cameras, to really make sure that we had a better capability of at least seeing these people before they walked through the door of the community. But that has changed our mentality, our where we're at. So if I say we're all suffering from PTSD, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that we still can't wrap our heads around how horrible that day was, how horrible it's been, and who are the people that are living right near us. The people in Gaza that are just a few hundred meters from the communities in the Gaza envelope, that they still haven't been able to go back and live there. And then where we are, where, you know, each community has an Arab village right nearby. And you begin to appreciate how God is really watching over us. How what happened on October 7th could have happened over and over and over again before and since. And yet it hasn't. We have to be vigilant. We have to, you know, take care. So when I say we are balancing these two ends, we are the PTSD that belongs on the table or on the couch or whatever they're on, you know, with the psychoanalyst trying to help you through something. And at the same time, we are moving forward, we are living, and we remain optimistic. Does that make any sense? Not a whole lot. If you don't put God into that equation, there's no reason to be optimistic. Absolutely no reason in the world. But putting God in the equation gives us, I don't know, maybe ammunition? It's something. It gives us this extra strength, this extra positiveness, okay? And I'll give you a few examples of this. There was this one young woman, and we've heard more and more stories like this since. Her name is Agam Berger, and she was the first ones that were released were these 5 young women who had been, I forgot what the word is in English. They would watch the screens. You know, they were army soldiers that were in charge of watching the screens to see, you know, the cameras, who's coming, what they're doing. And she was one of those, and a lot of them were murdered on October 7th, and some of them were taken prisoner, and the 5 that were remaining there in hostages were all released, you know, in the past couple of weeks. So this one woman insisted on, to the best of her ability, keeping Shabbat and keeping the kosher laws. Now, I don't think they were given much meat, but you know, if she was ever had that opportunity, she wouldn't eat it. But she kept Shabbat, and the girls that were with her, and they were sometimes together, or some of them were together, there was one girl came out before her, and she said that she prayed regularly. And by her prayer, got the other girls, who maybe were not as used to praying, they got them praying too. And the girls themselves said they would feel such strength and encouragement by her determination to remember the Sabbath, to keep the Shabbat in whichever way she could, and to pray and to include them in the prayer. They felt strengthened because of her dedication. It kind of infected them. And then one of the guys that came out after that, it turns out, he wasn't with her at all and was completely separate. He made kiddush every Friday night. Now, what do you do when you make kiddush? Usually, you have a cup of wine or grape juice, and you sing some scripture and a blessing, okay? Now, I guarantee you they didn't have wine. I guarantee you they didn't even have grape juice. They probably didn't even have water. I don't know if they had any food at all. Well, what did that mean, she made kiddush? She recited the scripture, or this is a guy, he recited the scripture and the blessing. Now, imagine, when you say kiddush on Friday night, you have this amazing table spread before you with the best food of the week, Okay, that's the Shabbat is you save your best things and your best recipes and you put in the most time and you cook a beautiful meal, 3-4 courses, right? And you have a table set with your best china and crystal and silver and everything's gorgeous. And that is what Kiddush usually is. It's a blessing before all of this, where first of all, you're remembering God who created the universe, God who created the Shabbat. You're thanking him for your bounty. And can you imagine being a hostage in the most worst situation and thanking God for your bounty? It's amazing. But we see these people who were in the most difficult, terrible situation and pulled at something, at whatever they had, to keep God close to them. And that kept them going, and that gave them strength, and that gave them optimism, and that gave them the ability to withstand and to keep going. And these little stories, and of course there's many more, but I won't, we've had enough. But, these are the stories that when they come back and we hear some of them, it keeps us all going. It gives us all an ability to say, yes, we have had a very traumatic year, and the trauma is not over. We still have these people in Gaza. We have to get them out. We have lost so many soldiers. We are, and just the terrible conflict that the government of Israel is facing now. President Trump has been amazing. And a week or two ago, he said, I'm putting down an ultimatum. If all the hostages are not back by Saturday, all hell breaks loose. Well, we thought that was great. And then we were trying to figure out, well, what does that mean? All hell breaks loose. And every single Israeli reporter was asking the same question, well, what does that mean? Well, in the end, it became clear that basically was he saying that, okay, Israel, you can have all hell break loose. That's fine. I mean, he wasn't going to go over and okay. He was just saying that. But what is Israel's problem? If all hell breaks loose, the first thing they're going to do is kill the rest of the hostages. So what do? You want all hell to break loose, and they have us by our throat. And you know why they have us by our throat? Because we care about people. And they don't. They don't care how many they don't care how many Gazans die. They love it. In fact, they inflate the numbers and they make up stories and they put their weapons in schools and in hospitals because they're trying to get their civilians killed. Okay? And us, we're bending over backwards to save lives. But isn't that the same thing? Doesn't that mean that God is in us and not in them? Because why do we care about life? What did God tell us about human beings? We're all created in the image of God. And the reason we care about, yes, you care about your sister and your mother because they're your family and you love them. Why do you care about a perfect stranger? Because it's a human being. It's a human being that is created in the image of God, which means you don't destroy the image you don't destroy God. Every human being that is destroyed is a desecration of God's name at some level. And this is how we come to life, and they are just not in the same place. And so these are the kinds of things that this is the trouble with, this is the challenge we have. People will say, you can't worry about the hostages because, so let's say there's 70 hostages, let's say 50 are already dead, 25 are alive. So maybe 25 people is the price you have to pay in order to destroy the people who might kill many, many more people afterwards. It makes a lot of sense. It's extremely logical. But every one of us stands and looks at the mirror and say, can we do that? Can we just let these people die? We can't. So you can say, oh, Israel's a bunch of softies. It's who we are. And I believe it's who we are because we take seriously this idea that a human being is created in the image of God. So what do we do? On Thursday, we were watching TV and saw the bodies being returned, and we were just crying. Everybody was crying. Then we found out, of course, that one of the bodies wasn't even Shiri Bibas. Can you imagine? They take some Arab woman and send her in a coffin to us. That's how much they think of their own people. Well, we'll just throw some lady at the Israelis. Unbelievable. But thank God on Friday they returned her body. But as we were watching the coffins and crying, I was thinking of David, King David, but he wasn't quite king yet, when he learns that Saul and Jonathan have been killed. And he has this beautiful poem, this is in 2 Samuel chapter 1, has this beautiful poem about, it's like a eulogy on these two people who, well, Saul was trying to kill him all these years, and it's amazing he had something good to say about him, but he does. And Jonathan, of course, he had a very special relationship with, but there's a refrain, 3 times he says this, very often say, it's translated, how the mighty have fallen, but that's not it. How these heroes have fallen. How have these heroes fallen? And I think about the fact that who were these? These were 2 people, Saul and Jonathan, the king and his son, who were defending Israel and fighting against the Philistines to protect Israel, and they fell in that battle, and that battle they lost. Afterwards, David defeats them. But that battle they lost, and they fought valiantly, and they fought for the nation of Israel. And I think that what David is describing here is not just his personal feeling, but he's talking about these were people who were fighting against the Philistines. And he talks about Gath, and he talks about the places where the Philistines lived. And the Philistines here represent an enemy that was persecuting and fighting against Israel from the time of the judges until David, somewhere in the middle of David's reign. A long time, hundreds of years. And he talks about these 2 people, how heroes have fallen. And I kept thinking of that, how heroes have fallen when we saw these bodies coming back. And yes, 2 babies can also be heroes. And this woman can also be a hero. And every single hostage that has come back, whether alive or dead, and every single soldier who has fallen defending the lives of the people of Israel are heroes. And they're amazing people who have sacrificed themselves for the good of Israel. And here the battle was against the Philistines, who were in Gaza. But the Philistines were never used as a representation of absolute evil. There's another biblical nation that represented the ultimate evil, and that is Amalek. And God says to us in Deuteronomy 25, remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you were leaving Egypt. He happened upon you on the way, and he attached himself to the weakest amongst you, the stragglers at the end. And you were tired and weary and were not fearing God. It will come to pass when the Lord your God will give you rest from all your enemies who surround you in the land that the Lord your God will give you as a territory to inherit. You shall erase the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. You shall not forget. Now, think about what this tells us about Amalek. Amalek went after the weakest people, the stragglers. They went after the people, 83-year-old man, 9-month-old baby. This is who these horrible Gazan Amalekites went after. Butchers. terrible, horrible, evil people with a personal vendetta, even though they didn't know us. That's Amalek. Now, I thought it was a bit of an irony that Saul fell in battle because he did not erase Amalek. He did not finish the job. He did not fully understand how dangerous Amalek is. He thought it was just another war against another people. There was something, all of a sudden I made that connection. I said, whoa, okay, this is what was going on here. And David, as much as he has such beautiful words to say of a king of Israel, of Saul and of Jonathan, there's something there that translates later into the fact that he himself was going to kill the Philistines. He actually had some dealings with Amalek as well, but that's separate. I think today in our lifetime, we have to recognize that we have confronted Amalek. And when we confront Amalek, we dare not make excuses. We dare not forget. And these are not technically Amalekites. They're gone, the original nation. But I think God here has given us a way of looking at things that we must take to heart. We must destroy Amalek. We must destroy Hamas. We must destroy their aiders and abettors and all those people that hate us, because if they continue to live, not only will we not be safe in Israel, but if they continue to live, they will continue to spread evil that will challenge and threaten all of us all over the world. If we are not willing to stand up for what's good and what's righteous and what's godly, then we're going to have an ongoing problem with evil. And evil is not, it's easy to say, oh, there's a spiritual war going on in the heavens. I'm not saying there isn't. But God here in Deuteronomy didn't say, when you confront Amalek, pray that the spiritual warriors win, the right ones. He said, go out and do it yourself. God will be with us, and he'll stand with us. But you got to do it yourself also. But I'm still optimistic. We're dealing with a very difficult problem, but we have to hold on to that faith and that promise that God gave us, that we will be around forever. That even after the curses, we will be ingathered. We are being ingathered. We should see this, what's happening today. The miracle of the state of Israel. The miracles that we see. I'll give you a miracle that just happened Thursday night. Bombs were planted in 5 buses. 3 went off. You know why they went off? The idiot who put them there set the timer for 9 p.m. instead of 9 a.m. And they went off in buses that had parked for the night. And the other ones were discovered because of that. They started looking at all the buses. They were discovered before they went off. I mean, I look at that and I say, this is God. Can you imagine 5 buses filled with people in the center of cities going off with bombs? It would have been horrific. So God is with us, and God is watching us, and God is protecting us. And we are going through a terrible time, but we have to continue looking to God. And I think there's something all of you can do as well. First of all, pray. First of all, understand God's role in all of this. Now, that doesn't mean we know everything God's doing. We really don't. Okay? And that's okay. We're only human beings. But understand, don't look at the TV and say it's all over. It's not. Okay, God is going to ensure that that doesn't mean we won't suffer. That doesn't mean there won't be tragedies. But there will be no end of Israel. You can rest assured. That won't be, because God has this covered, okay? But we have to do our part. We have to be vigilant. Now, I'm not expecting any of you to go out and become soldiers in the IDF and go fight Hamas. That's not your job. But write to the president. Say, yes, we need to clean out Gaza. We want you to do that. Help Israel do that. Yes, continue to have Israel's back. You're amazing. Let him hear these things. Very, very important. And of course, come to Israel now, all of you who are coming. You can't imagine how, I understand you're going to be going down to the Gaza envelope and doing some volunteering there. You can't imagine how much encouragement that gives to the people of Israel, that you come from abroad and you're saying, we're with you. We're standing with you here. Whatever you can provide for financial support. Our communities are tough, but it's taken its toll. We have young men there were communities that didn't have any young men for months at a time. And things are just kind of getting back to normal now, but we don't know. Any minute we can have, again, a big draft and more of these reserves. And what happens to the children? And what happens to the senior citizens? And what happens to the teenagers? And what happens to the wives who are running the homes? And this is where we come in at CFOIC, providing assistance for them, financial assistance, programs, encouragement, psychological support, whatever. And of course, security support. Every one of these things that you are participating in, and you can continue to participate, is a huge help, because then you can become our partners. And if we stand together across the oceans, we will truly overcome the PTSD of all of us. And we will be a valiant, mighty nation that no Amalek will ever defeat. That's it.